What's up everyone? It is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. And so today is a super exciting video because we are going to be delving into UC Berkeley versus Stanford. And so these are two major universities in California's Bay Area. And so Berkeley and Stanford do have a little bit of a rivalry. And so because I feel like so many students applying to colleges probably apply to UC Berkeley and Stanford, but I haven't seen a lot of videos comparing the two. I know for me, when I was applying to colleges, I applied to both schools, but I didn't really know much about them. And so speaking of applying to colleges, if you are a student right now applying to college, you should definitely check out Study Hall College Consulting. We are a team of UC Berkeley students who review college application essays as well as conduct one-on-one calls with students. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk with some Berkeley and Stanford students.
Hi guys, my name's Cathy. I just graduated in May from UC Berkeley and I was an econ and data science double major. I'm originally from Philly, which is where we are right now.
Hi, I'm Eric. I graduated class of 2020 from Stanford with a math major, and I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona.
What's the best part about your university?
I would say it's a few things. One is our location. So we're really close to San Francisco. We're like a 20-minute BART. And that's really nice because you kind of get the city and then you also get Bay Area, which is like lots of tech and like up and coming new innovations and stuff. And then there's also a lot of nature at Berkeley. So we're 3 hours from Yosemite. We're close to Tahoe. There's a lot of hiking. So it's good for outdoorsy people, I think. And then along with that, I think our academics are really, really solid. In terms of just pure academics, like the actual departments themselves are always like very high ranking, and we just had 2 Nobel like prize winners this year, like lots of really good professors and people who really care about their work and their research.
My favorite part about Stanford is probably a tie between the weather. The weather is just really amazing. We have this joke on campus sometimes about the Stanford weather machine where just the weather is always really nice, even like nicer than the surrounding areas, no matter what throughout the year. And there must be some sort of like conspiracy or organization behind it. I also, just really love just like I think the academic freedom at Stanford, like with the quarter system, which allows you to take more classes than you normally would within a 4-year period in the semester system. Like it allows you to experiment a lot if you don't know exactly what you want to do, or if you know what you want to do and you want to like dabble in some other fields or like majors for a minor. I think it's a really good place to just have diversity in your academic interests. There's just always like really good faculty who are like willing to help you out and just really like good one-on-one resources.
What's the worst part about your university?
The worst part about UC Berkeley, where do I begin? I would say we are pretty known for grade deflation, so a lot of classes, especially STEM classes, will average to a B or a B minus, which is not, if you think about like if the average grade is a B or a B minus, then half the kids get below a B or a B minus. So that's not the best, and it kind of hinders a lot of maybe recruiting things, like having like a 3.2 or 3.3 is actually very, very common, like at UC Berkeley. I would also say that in general, class sizes can be pretty large depending on what classes you're in, what majors you're in, so it might be hard to get individual attention. That might just be a public school thing, honestly, but I think like at Cal, it's a huge thing where no one's really holding your hand. Like you're not guaranteed internships, you're not guaranteed research, you're not guaranteed, which obviously like makes sense, but I know a lot of other schools, like my friends have talked about, there's a decent amount of, there's more, they kind of like coddle you a little more.
Well, what's the largest class you've ever been in?
1,500 people, CS61A, which is the intro computer science class. I think it was 1,500. It might be 2,000 now. It's between 1,000 and 2,000. So it's mostly the STEM classes are really big, but if the liberal arts ones, they usually separate into smaller classes. It's very competitive for sure. Oh, also, I don't know why I'm listing so many, but it's just, being honest here. In terms of majors, I think it's really important to look at, like when you're going to Cal, you have to declare majors basically, and you need a certain GPA for that. Like I know for computer science, you need a 3.3 GPA in like certain classes to declare.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a GPA requirement.
Really? Yeah. Okay, gotcha. That's another thing. So there's a GPA cap for CS, econ, I think like cog sci, math, stats, like all these classes have GPA cutoffs. And again, 3.3, 3.0. It doesn't sound like that hard. Usually most people can. CS is a little different, like a lot of people can. But yeah, that's just something to be aware of. And then also, for if you want to like apply to the business school, like you have to apply into that, and the acceptance rate's like 15%. So that's 15% of UC Berkeley students. So you have to like keep that in mind.
Well, one thing is, it's like it definitely has its advantages, but like the bubble, because basically like most of undergraduate campus is sort of like surrounded by like many acres of like just green like grass fields before you get to any of the city. And so usually like if you want to get to Palo Alto, the closest walk is sort of like 40 minutes. And I think like there's definitely benefits to being separated from the outside world and just being in like a college environment and not having to worry about much else besides that. And also 95% of undergrads live on campus, and so we don't have to worry too much about apartment hunting, and usually your friends live pretty close by. And so that definitely has social benefits, but there's not really many good restaurants around, which really sucks. Yeah, Berkeley has a really good food scene, so if that's something that's important to you,
Yeah,
it's a
the food's
plus.
pretty good.
Yeah, and like Palo Alto does have good food, it's just like not as readily accessible. It takes a trip out of campus. I think another thing can be, it really depends on what kind of person you are and what you're looking for, but I think like the tech atmosphere, while it's very like inviting and innovative, can also be a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people who like, if their day-to-day doesn't revolve around doing a lot of things that relate to tech or innovation, just being in the heart of Silicon Valley can be a little bit overwhelming or drown out sort of other, like those kinds of conversations can sort of drown out other interests sometimes.
What's one thing you would change about your university?
A few things I would change about Berkeley are, one, kind of guidance from the administrators. In general, I think people don't have a ton of direction in terms of like majors and like what to join and stuff like that. And I think it would help if like we had advisors and we had to meet with them every semester or something like that, or there was some sort of requirement to meet with advisors more often, or like if it was easier to meet with them, because sometimes you schedule an appointment and it takes a while, or like everything's filled up. So just hiring more advisors I think would really be really helpful. But there are certain clubs that basically like they're just really selective. It's something to keep in mind. Like I've applied to many clubs and got rejected from many clubs, and like I was in like a business fraternity, and I know that in like that space like acceptance rates are like 5% sometimes. It's kind of crazy.
All right, one thing I changed about my university is that I would add just a lot more restaurants on campus, so that we would have access to more food options. One big thing I would change, which I think is something that they were in the process of changing before COVID, was this system that we have for determining where people live after freshman year, called the draw, where it's sort of like everyone's given like randomly allocated like to a seed, and like depending on what your seed is, like you get your first choice as to where you want to live, and spaces just slowly fill up as you go down that list. And so a lot of people who end up on the bottom of that list just get really poor housing decisions, or sometimes even get like unassigned. And so I think it's like, in a way it's fair because it's randomized, but people who get the short end of the stick don't really have a good experience, and so there's probably better ways of implementing that system.
What's the best tradition your school has?
At Stanford is this, at the beginning of new student orientation in freshman year, there's this thing called band run, where at the end of the first day, the Stanford band, which is just this huge quirky band filled with like people who play all kinds of instruments, they just rally all of the freshman dorms out, and everyone runs to main quad and just has like this big band jam sesh, and I think it's usually pretty well received. Another fun tradition we have, or maybe not like fun, but I think it's cool, is Primal Scream, which is I think at the end of Dead Week every quarter, which is like right before finals week. Like at midnight, everyone just like can scream at the top of their lungs, and so you'll just hear people screaming really loudly, but it's like very cathartic because it's a stressful time. I remember being really startled the first time I heard it because I didn't know it was a tradition. So I just started hearing people screaming, but yeah, it's a good time.
Best traditions, I'll list two at Cal. One is Cal Day, so it's kind of like a day to celebrate the university, and that's when a bunch of incoming freshmen, like people who are accepted, come to Berkeley to kind of check out the campus. So you get to see like a bunch of new kids, like new faces, and then there's a lot of activities, and then also on that day, like a lot of fraternities are throwing like pretty big parties during the day, so it's super fun, like a really good time. This thing called the Naked Run, where again, you guys have Dead Week, right? Yeah, you just mentioned that. Dead Week is, I don't know if people know this, but it's the week before finals where there's no classes and you kind of just study. There's one day on Dead Week during like a certain time, there's always a secret where a bunch of people will just get naked and run throughout the libraries, completely like stripped out naked, and just run through the libraries. And sometimes if you're lucky, you can catch it, or like if you know something.
If you're lucky.
If you're either unlucky or lucky, depending on how you view it, you can catch it, and it's kind of fun and crazy. But yeah.
Do Berkeley and Stanford have rivalries? What's your favorite one?
Yes.
Yes.
That's very big.
Yeah, I would say the big game is the biggest rivalry. I'll give you like more context. So it's a football game between Stanford and Berkeley, and we have this thing called the axe. Like this weird, it's literally like an axe but in a frame, I guess. And whoever wins the game that year gets control of the axe. Basically, like it goes back to that campus, or like, yeah. So I think for like what, 7 or 9 years in a row, you guys.
Yeah, I think we're like a 8 to 9 year
winning
streak, and then we just lost the last year.
Yeah. So it was pretty crazy. Like I remember my 4 years here, like freshman, sophomore, junior, we lost every single time. The last time, we were like, okay, like it's not gonna happen. Like Stanford's really good this year. Like it's not gonna happen. Somehow, like we managed to beat them for the first time in like 9 years. So that was really exciting. But yeah, that's a huge rivalry. Like that specifically football.
My favorite Berkeley-Stanford rivalry is my a cappella group, or I was in an a cappella group called the Stanford Fleet Street Singers, and there's this another singing group at Berkeley called the UC Men's Octet, and they're very talented, and we both have like sort of roots in barbershop style, and there are some gigs we go to where we have to like compete against each other. It's like kind of fun, but it's a good time.
What kind of student would thrive at your university?
I would say at Berkeley, someone who would thrive is someone who can kind of, one, do things on their own and like seek out opportunities on their own. Two, kind of have like thick skin. So classes can be very challenging, and also people are really smart on campus. Like in certain STEM classes, like these kids are very good at math and like are just innately really good at math and STEM and stuff. So you have to work super hard to even like compete with them, like even like getting like an average score in a midterm, like you have to like put in effort basically. So someone who like is very hardworking, who's like willing to seek out opportunities for themselves, and then yeah, I think is like not afraid of a challenge, would like do really well. Also who really cares about like equality and like social justice, I think would do pretty well, because that's pretty big here too.
I think someone who would thrive at Stanford is someone who is able to take advantage of the opportunities of like academic freedom with the quarter system and like the loose requirements, general education requirements that we have, which allow you to explore pretty much just anything that you want on your own. But that process can be pretty scary or overwhelming if you're not like intentional about how you're designing your course plan or going about what you're going to experiment with and how that informs your decisions on like what you ultimately want to do.
Any advice for students interested in attending these schools?
So obviously good grades, but then also like clubs, extracurriculars, and then I think it's really good, especially for younger high school students watching this, to kind of have a passion or something like you're really good at and stick with it. Like instead of doing a bunch of different things, maybe stick with like 2 or 3 things that you really hone down and are good at, and like very that's like your thing. I think that'll help a lot in the application process.
A lot of people, or like high school students who want to get into like high brand colleges, like they really like they stress out and think that like if they just pile on as many extracurriculars as they can and like seem as if they're just like really talented in many different things, that'll like help them. But I think that just focusing on what really motivates you and following things that you're really passionate about and like aren't doing for the sake of getting into like an admissions process somewhere. If you're really just passionate about those things and can express and articulate why those things make you passionate and why you pursue them, then that'll definitely help you for your college essays too, because they really want to see how do you motivate yourself and how do you talk about the things that you want to pursue.
And finally, why did you choose Berkeley or Stanford?
So I personally chose Cal because I was between a few schools and it was actually a really tough decision. The other school I got into was I visited and I didn't like it very much, / people told me not to go there. It's also really cold. So yeah, I think Cal was kind of another option where the weather's super nice, the academics are great. I kind of wanted a traditional experience, so a school with a football team that I could root for. But yeah, I think I chose it because I thought the academics were very, very solid. It's a pretty high brand name school, so that was pretty important to me. The weather is really, really good, and I think I would have enjoyed that. And I'm from Philly, so the idea of going to California I thought would be a really fun adventure and something super different that I thought that I should probably take advantage of.
Yeah, I also made a pretty tough decision between this school and one other school. And for me, it the other school was more specialized in STEM and was pretty intense in STEM. And I knew that I wanted to do math. I was pretty sure about that, but I also didn't know about what other academic interests besides math that I would want to explore. So a big reason that I chose Stanford was its quarter system structure, and also just its pretty liberal structure about general education requirements and what you need to do. I think that really enticed me because it let me be sure that I could have a lot of control over my course plan every quarter and explore just whatever I wanted to. And I also just felt that if I wanted to explore other things, that personally I would feel a little restricted by a semester schedule, just in terms of the room for the number of courses I could possibly take. That being said, I did think that the quarter system also has some disadvantages in terms of it being really fast paced and feeling there's a lot of testing going on a lot of the time. But I do definitely think it still has its merits in terms of exploring. Sort of along those lines, another reason I chose Stanford is that I wanted to be exposed to a more diverse pool of people doing all sorts of jacks of all trades. And I felt that the other school I was considering, I would only sort of be exposed to people doing STEM. Go Tree. Yes, go Tree.
Follow and subscribe to Rachel Lynn. She's the best.
Bye.
Bye.